Chosen one. Listen carefully, because your arrival here is not coincidence. Heaven has orchestrated this moment down to the very breath you take as you read these words. You've been led through fire, silence, and confusion. But now the whisper from eternity breaks through. You passed the test most people fail. There is a stillness before revelation. Maybe you've felt it lately, the unshakable sense that something sacred was shifting inside you. You couldn't explain it to anyone. The noise of the world grew louder. Yet within you, a strange calm began to form. That was heaven's signal. When you chose to keep walking through the storm instead of sitting down in despair, you triggered a spiritual recognition. It is written in the book of James, chapter 1, verse 12. Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because, having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life, which the Lord has promised. Do you feel the weight of that promise? You've been walking in it without even realizing it. Every time you were overlooked, heaven was watching. Every time you loved without being loved back, the test deepened. Every silent battle you fought in the dark became a line on heaven's ledger, marking your faith as genuine. There's an image heaven gave me for you. Picture a seed trapped in the soil, in darkness, unseen. It breaks open. The pressure of the earth isn't punishment, it's the birthplace of power. That's what your past season was. The darkness you hated was the environment where your purpose sprouted. Others couldn't see your growth, but God was watching roots form where no one applauded. A story comes to mind of one, like you. He waited for years, with nothing to show but disappointment. People mocked his prayers. Even those closest to him told him to stop dreaming. But he didn't. He kept serving, kept believing, kept forgiving. Years later, when the doors opened, his faith had muscle. He had passed through what destroyed others. He didn't realize that the test was never about comfort, it was about character. That's your story too. You've survived what others surrendered to. That's proof of calling. You didn't break because you weren't meant to. Every unanswered prayer trained your patience. Every delay sharpened your discernment. While others sought escape, you sought endurance, and that endurance became your divine signature. Imagine yourself as gold inside a furnace. Fire surrounds you. Yes, but gold never fears the flame. It depends on it. Impurities rise to the surface, only so they can be removed. What felt like loss was actually refinement. Heaven wasn't trying to destroy you. It was preparing you to hold more glory without cracking. You may have questioned, why me? Why so long? But the truth is, this wasn't punishment. It was selection. Heaven doesn't test the unchosen. The exam was proof that your name carries weight in the spirit realm. You weren't being ignored, you were being inspected. And now, the results are in. You passed. There's a shift happening, even as you read this. The heaviness that's clung to your shoulders will begin to lift. Where confusion clouded your path, clarity will soon emerge. You will sense divine alignment calls, returning, doors reopening, strength returning. That's the evidence of transition from testing to triumph. Look at your life as a mountain path. The climb was steep, lonely, and filled with moments when turning back felt easier. But if you could see from heaven's view, you'd notice how close you are to the summit. You've been tested at every elevation, your patience, your faith, your humility, and now the wind changes. The view is about to unfold. Chosen one. This is your confirmation. You did not fail. You endured. And heaven celebrates that endurance. This message found you at the exact second you were ready to understand it. That's no algorithm, that's orchestration. If this resonates deep in your spirit, let your response be a simple act of faith. Like this message, if your heart feels its truth, share it. So, another weary soul might be reminded that their waiting is not wasted. And subscribe to remain connected to the flow of these divine reminders, not because of routine, but because you sense this is part of your calling. In the comments, write 689, a mark that says, I recognize my test, and I've passed. I lift your head. Chosen one. The silence is over. The divine signal has sounded. The Father is calling your name not as a student under trial, but as a graduate stepping into destiny. You are seen, approved, and crowned. You remember the nights when silence screamed louder than words. The world around you kept spinning. People moved on, but you stuck in stillness, wondered if heaven had forgotten your name. That season of isolation wasn't punishment. It was a divine classroom. The test of isolation. When God separates, it never feels sacred at first. It feels like loss. It feels like rejection. You watched doors close that you prayed would open. Friendships fade without explanation. And opportunities vanish just when you thought breakthrough was near. But in truth, heaven wasn't subtracting, it was refining. The crowd had to leave so you could hear the whisper. In isolation, God teaches what comfort cannot. The absence of noise reveals the authenticity of faith. You learned how to pray without response, how to trust without proof, and how to love without being noticed. Those moments you called lonely were actually invitations for divine intimacy. The ancient words recorded in the book of Nahum, chapter 1, verse 3, remind us, the Lord is slow to anger, but great in power. His way is in the whirlwind and the storm, and clouds are the dust of his feet. This is the hidden truth of your silence. While you stood still, God was moving through storms unseen. His footsteps thundered through the clouds of your confusion. You didn't hear him because he wasn't walking beside you. He was clearing the path ahead. Every unanswered prayer, every delayed promise, was him reshaping your surroundings before your arrival. There's a story of one like you, a quiet warrior who faced this very test. For months, she felt unseen, her prayers like echoes returning empty. She began to believe her purpose was slipping away. One night, she sat by her window and whispered, "If you're still here, give me one sign." And instead of thunder, came stillness. Not silence, but peace. She didn't realize that heaven had already answered, not with noise, but with nearness. That peace was proof. You see, isolation is not the absence of God, it's the arena where he reveals himself differently. When all external affirmation is stripped away, the only voice left to trust is his. That's when your roots go deep. The tree that stands in the open field may look beautiful, but the one growing alone in the storm has stronger roots. You are that tree. Think of the eagle again. It doesn't build its nest among flocks. It builds high, far from the chatter below. There, in solitude, its wings strengthen against fierce winds. That's what your wilderness has done. The world called it waiting. Heaven called it strengthening. Even David knew this tension. Long before his crown, he was alone in the fields, tending sheep. No spotlight, no applause. Just the rhythm of quiet faithfulness. The same pattern marks every chosen soul. Before the throne comes the hidden pasture. Before the roar comes the whisper. You've been through that pattern. Sometimes isolation exposes what applause once hid. It showed you who you really are when no one's watching. You discovered that your worth isn't tied to validation, that peace doesn't depend on people staying, and that your joy isn't rented, it's rooted. The test wasn't about your loneliness, it was about your loyalty. Would you remain when the noise stopped? Would you still trust when no one clapped? You did. Heaven watched as you carried your silence with dignity. You could have numbed the pain, chased distraction, or compromised your values to feel seen. But you didn't. That quiet resistance, that refusal to give up, was your answer sheet. Most fail this part because it feels unfair. But isolation, though uncomfortable, is sacred ground. There's another image heaven paints. Imagine a sculptor working on marble. The chisel strikes again and again. To an observer, it looks destructive, but to the artist, every strike reveals hidden beauty. The marble doesn't understand, but it endures. So did you. The hands that seemed to wound were shaping something eternal. Chosen one. Your isolation wasn't wasted time. It was divine investment. What you call delay was really preparation for depth. The people who left couldn't walk where you're going. Their absence is protection, not punishment. And the silence that once scared you now becomes your strength. You have learned the language of solitude, the rhythm of hiddenness, and the patience of those who wait with purpose. That's rare, that's holy, and that's why heaven trusts you with what comes next. The season of being unseen forged in you something the spotlight can't fake: authentic faith. You no longer need validation to move forward. The quiet taught you that obedience speaks louder than applause. And now, when noise returns, you'll carry silence like a weapon, steady, unmoved, certain. You have passed the test of isolation. And though no one celebrated it, heaven recorded it. There were moments when your heart broke so deeply that words failed you. Nights when tears soaked your pillow and silence became the only companion that didn't leave. You wondered, what did I do wrong? But the truth was never about guilt, it was about growth. Heaven wasn't punishing you, it was purifying you. The Spirit speaks through the writings of David in the Psalms. Chapter 34, verse 18. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. End through. You didn't see it, but that verse was alive around you in those nights of pain. When you felt abandoned, He was sitting beside you. When you said nothing, He heard everything. When you wept, heaven recorded every tear as evidence of endurance. You thought you were breaking down, but you were breaking open. Pain has always been heaven's secret classroom. It dismantles illusions, strips away noise, and leaves only truth behind. In the silence that followed your loss, you began to hear something new, your own heart learning to trust again. There was once a woman who prayed for God to make her strong. Instead, everything familiar fell apart. Her job ended. Her friends disappeared. Her plans collapsed. She said, "This doesn't look like strength." But years later, When storms came again, she didn't flinch. That's when she realized he had answered her prayer, just not in the way she expected. The pain had been the gym where her spirit learned endurance. You've walked that same road. The cracks in your heart became corridors for light. What once made you weep now makes you wise. You can sense when someone is hurting because you've spoken the same silent language of pain. And that is why heaven trusts you. You feel deeply, but don't drown. You ache, but still stand. You understand that brokenness isn't the end. It's the birthplace of authenticity. Picture yourself as clay in the potter's hands. When he presses, it hurts. When he reshapes, it feels like loss. But he doesn't crush, he crafts. Each press forms capacity. Each turn of the wheel builds stability. The pain that bent you was never meant to break you. It was meant to mold you into something that could carry more glory without cracking. There's an image of gold being refined in the furnace. When fire touches it, impurities rise to the surface. The fire doesn't destroy the gold, it reveals it. You've been in that same fire, and now your faith gleams with something unshakable. The world measures survival by what's left standing. Heaven measures it by what still believes. And you, even with a trembling voice, still whispered, "I trust you." That whisper shook the atmosphere, because in the kingdom, obedience in pain speaks louder than worship in comfort. Now that you've walked through it, your pain no longer owns you, it empowers you. You can speak to the hurting with authority, not theory. You can say, "I've been there, and I didn't stay there." The scars you carry are not signs of weakness, but signatures of grace. So right here, where you stand, healed but still human, I want you to seal this revelation with the declaration, comment, "I rise again." Why this phrase? Because it's short enough to type, but powerful enough to shake your mindset. When you write, "I rise again," you're not talking about pride, you're talking about resurrection. You're declaring that what once buried you has become your ground to stand on. That phrase tells heaven, I'm done identifying with my pain. I'm identifying with my purpose. It tells your past, you don't define me anymore. And it tells the darkness, you lost. Type it not for attention, but for alignment. Let it echo in your spirit as a promise to yourself. I will not stay in pieces. I will rise again. Stronger, softer, and wiser. Because that's what chosen ones do. They rise differently. They rise with mercy in their hands, with scars that tell stories, and with eyes that see redemption in everything. And as you rise, remember this, the same God who sat with you in the valley is the one who now walks beside you toward the mountain. The journey doesn't erase the pain, it transforms it into purpose. Every tear becomes oil for healing. Every scar, a roadmap of survival. Your rising isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of influence. You endured heartbreak and came out with heart power. You learned that pain, when surrendered, become prophecy. And heaven smiles because you didn't just survive. You rose. There comes a point in every chosen one's journey when pain takes on a new form. It's no longer the sharp sting of heartbreak or the cold silence of isolation. It becomes a teacher. You stop asking why and start asking what now. That's when you realize you've entered the hidden curriculum of pain. The sacred text captures this transformation clearly. As declared in the scroll of Hosea, chapter 6, verse 1, "Come, Let us return to the Lord. He has torn us to pieces, but he will heal us. He has injured us, but he will bind up our wounds. The verse sounds paradoxical, almost cruel at first glance. But Hosea wasn't describing punishment. He was describing process. The tearing is not the end, it's the beginning of restoration. To be torn by God means he has decided that the old version of you can no longer carry the destiny ahead. What breaks you is the same hand that will heal you. You've lived this truth already, haven't you? When everything fell apart, you didn't realize heaven was rearranging. What looked like loss was divine surgery. God removed people, habits, and illusions that couldn't go where you were heading. The process hurt because growth always does. You prayed for elevation, but didn't know elevation requires excavation. Think of a seed again. It breaks before it blooms. The outer shell must crack for life to emerge. That crack isn't destruction, it's destiny pushing through confinement. You, too, were cracked open by circumstances that felt cruel, but they were simply heaven's way of saying, it's time to grow. There's a story of a man who prayed for peace. Instead, his life grew chaotic, bills piled up, relationships strained. Uncertainty filled his mind. He thought heaven ignored him. But one day, sitting in exhaustion, he realized he had become more patient, less reactive, more grateful. Peace didn't arrive as comfort, it arrived as character. What he thought was chaos was training. That is the curriculum of pain it teaches, through contradiction. The tests are disguised as losses, the lessons written in tears. You learn patience through waiting, faith through lack, wisdom through mistakes. Heaven never wastes a wound. Every ache holds instruction. In that hidden classroom, silence becomes a textbook, and your tears become ink. Each prayer you whispered from exhaustion was another page written in your story of refinement. While you were asking for escape, God was crafting endurance. There's a powerful image that often comes to me when I think of this process, a sword being forged. The metal is heated until it glows, then hammered relentlessly. To an observer, it looks like violence, but to the blacksmith, it's precision. Each strike shapes strength. Without the fire and the hammer, the blade would remain soft and dull. Pain has done that for you. It has turned you into something unbreakable. At first, you resisted. You prayed the pressure away. But then, something shifted. You began to surrender. That's when the lesson took root. Because surrender is not giving up, it's giving in to transformation. Once you stopped fighting the process, the healing began. The hidden curriculum teaches humility. You learn that control is an illusion and that trust is not a feeling, it's a decision. It's the quiet yes you whisper, even when nothing makes sense. That's the sound heaven responds to. You also learn discernment. Pain has a way of clarifying what truly matters. The people who stayed became family. The things that fell away were never meant to last. Even your goals changed. You stopped chasing visibility and started valuing peace. The tearing simplified you. And simplicity is sacred. The wounds you carry are not random. They are proof that heaven has invested deeply in your becoming. Each scar speaks of territory, conquered internal battles won, unseen faith maintained. You are not the same person you were before this pain began. And that is the point. You now walk differently, think differently, love differently. You move slower. But serré. You speak less, but with more weight. The breaking didn't silence you. It calibrated your voice. The hidden curriculum of pain is not something you study once, it's a lifelong revelation, but you've mastered its first lessons: endurance, surrender, trust. You've come to understand that divine wounding always precedes divine wisdom. So now, as you look at your scars, don't despise them. They are sacred inscriptions written by the hand of God, reminders that He both wounds and heals, breaks and binds, removes and restores. You are proof that heaven's hardest lessons create earth's strongest warriors. There comes a sacred moment in every chosen one's journey when separation begins to make sense. At first, it feels like abandonment, like everyone and everything you loved is slipping away. But then, slowly, light starts to filter through the cracks. You realize the distance was never meant to destroy you, it was meant to define you. We hear the echo in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 7, verse 6. For you are a people holy to the Lord your God. The Lord has chosen you out of all the peoples on the face of the earth to be His treasured possession. That single verse explains your entire season of separation. You were chosen, and chosen ones cannot remain where compromise lives. Heaven didn't isolate you to punish you. It separated you to protect you. Maybe you didn't understand why people faded. Maybe you blamed yourself for doors that closed or relationships that ended abruptly. But now, you're beginning to see it differently. When gold is refined, the impurities rise to the surface and are skimmed away. That's what happened around you. The unnecessary was removed so that the essential could remain. There's a quiet story told in the Spirit about a young believer. She prayed for elevation, and suddenly her circle grew smaller. Friends, she thought, were forever began to drift. It hurt. But in that silence, she began to hear heaven clearly. She later said, "When everyone left, I finally met the voice that never leaves." That's what divine separation does. It removes the noise so that the whisper of destiny can be heard. Sometimes, being chosen means walking alone for a while. The narrow road never comes with a crowd. But look at how far you've come already, stronger, wiser, quieter inside. What used to break you now builds you. What used to confuse you now clarifies everything. Think of yourself as a candle. A candle burns alone in the dark, yet it changes the atmosphere around it. It doesn't fight the darkness, it simply shines. That's what your journey is doing. You've become light in places that once felt cold. Every time you choose peace instead of bitterness, every time you respond with grace instead of anger, heaven smiles. That's separation turned into sanctification. And now, standing here, you've crossed into a new phase, the moment of realization. You are not who you were. The silence, the loss, the distance, all of it made you radiant. You've been refined for purpose. If these words reach your spirit, take a moment to breathe it in. You are chosen not because of what you do, but because of who you are becoming. This message exists to remind you of that truth, to hold up a mirror when the world tries to make you forget. Like a lighthouse that refuses to go dark, this space continues to shine for those still finding their way through the storm. The flame doesn't burn for itself, it burns so that someone lost might see home again. If this light has touched your soul, Gently add your flame to it. Press. Like so, the glow can travel farther. If you feel its warmth, share it. Someone in your circle may be standing in their own night right now. Subscribe to stay close to this rhythm of renewal, like keeping a lantern lit in your own window so that the message of hope always finds you again. And if your heart feels a quiet nudge, let your generosity become wind for this flame. Donate not out of duty, but out of devotion. Think of it as releasing a single spark that may light another soul's night. Your kindness becomes oil for this lamp, allowing its glow to reach corners you and I may never see. Never feel pressured. This light is free because grace is free. Your simple presence here is already a gift. But when hearts give freely, the light multiplies effortlessly like dawn spreading across the horizon. Chosen one, your separation was proof of selection. Your endurance, proof of belonging. You've been set apart not to stand above others, but to stand beside them as a guide. What once felt like loss now looks like calling. The world may not understand the quiet power you carry, but heaven does. And heaven smiles each time you choose light. You are entering the season where silence turns into songs, and every scar becomes a story of strength. Walk forward gently. Heaven is already preparing the next chapter of your unfolding grace. Every step you take now echoes eternity. Keep your heart open, your hands steady, and your faith alive. The same light that found you will guide countless others through their night. There is a stirring in the spirit that cannot be ignored. You feel it, don't you? The air carries a quiet electricity, something shifting, something awakening. You've endured the silence, passed through isolation, and survived the breaking. Now heaven whispers, recognition is coming. The prophet speaks in the writings of Haggai. Chapter 2, verse 9. The glory of this present house will be greater than the glory of the former house, declares the Lord Almighty. Oh, you've waited long enough to understand this verse, not as a promise for others, but as a prophecy for you. The former version of your life, though full of trial and endurance, was only the foundation. What comes next will not resemble the pain that preceded it. You've walked through ashes, unaware that a crown was being forged above the fire. This is the stage heaven uses to reveal those who stayed faithful when no one watched. Recognition doesn't begin with applause, it begins with authority. The shift taking place now isn't about being seen by people, it's about being acknowledged by heaven. Angels know your name. Darkness knows your name. Both realms recognize what you carry. Do you remember when no one believed you, when you spoke of purpose, and they smiled politely but didn't understand? That was necessary. Hidden seasons were heaven's protection. Your identity had to mature in private before being revealed in power. What is born too early dies too soon. That's why heaven kept you covered. Think of a pearl forming inside an oyster. It begins as irritation grain of sand, unseen, unwanted, but time and pressure transform it into treasure. You are that pearl. What once irritated your soul has now produced value. Those who doubted you will soon witness proof, not out of revenge, but as revelation. Recognition doesn't come to feed pride, it comes to confirm purpose. God elevates not for boasting, but to broadcast His faithfulness. You are stepping into a moment where endurance becomes evidence that waiting was never wasted. There's a story about a young man who served quietly and felt forgotten. One day, without announcement, Doors opened that he never knocked on. It wasn't luck, it was alignment. Heaven remembered. The same is about to happen for you. Signs of recognition will appear subtly at first. Messages from unexpected people. Peace. Replacing confusion. Small breakthroughs carrying eternal weight. Pay attention. These are confirmations, not coincidences. Heaven is saying, I see you. I never stopped. Oh, lift your head. You're not behind. You're right on time. Delay was disguise for development. Silence was strategy. Heaven ensured that when your name is spoken in rooms of destiny, you'd be ready to carry the weight of the call. If this word resonates within you, seal it with a declaration. Comment. The number 444. Why that number? Because 444 is a divine rhythm, a heavenly pattern of stability, protection, and perfect alignment with God's will. It marks those who have passed through testing and now stand firm on sacred ground. 1-4 for the Father, 1 for the Son, and 1 for the Spirit. When you type 444, you're not performing a ritual, you're responding to revelation. You're saying, I agree with heaven's timing. I accept the peace that comes after the storm. Imagine it as your fingerprint on a covenant, a quiet, yes, heaven hears louder than any shout. The number becomes a spiritual signature, declaring, I am anchored, I am aligned, I am approved. It's faith settling into peace, like a house resting on rock after surviving the flood. Let 444 be your reminder that the silence and breaking were never wasted. They were building your foundation. You've walked through wilderness, fire, and silence. Now comes recognition, the moment when what heaven saw in secret begins to echo in the open. The glory ahead of you will outshine the pain behind you. You will soon notice that the atmosphere around you begins to respond differently. Doors that once refused to open will start to recognize your knock, not because you've changed who you are, but because heaven has shifted what you carry. Your name has weight now. Every step forward is confirmation that the hidden season was never wasted. The patience you learned in silence has become authority. The humility you gained in pain has become wisdom. You walk lighter now, not because the path is easy, but because you finally trust the guide. And as this recognition unfolds, remember, the goal is not fame. It's fruit. Live quietly, shine consistently, and let your peace preach louder than your voice. The same grace that revealed you will sustain you, and heaven will continue to write your story in light. Every divine calling comes with an invisible examination, one that tests not your actions, but your intentions. By now, you've endured the silence, survived the isolation, and stood still in pain long enough to see how heaven works. But there is one more test, the one that separates the truly chosen from the merely gifted, the mirror of motives. The wisdom of Solomon declares in the book of Proverbs, chapter 21, verse 2, a person may think their own ways are right, but the Lord weighs the heart. That single truth pierces deeper than any sword. Heaven does not measure success by the magnitude of your work, but by the purity of your why. The Lord doesn't just see what your hands build, He sees the reason your hands move. You've probably noticed how quiet heaven gets when motives are being tested. Doors that once opened easily stay shut. Plans that looked promising collapse without warning. It's not punishment, it's refinement. God delays not to deny you, but to diagnose your heart. He waits until ambition is replaced by alignment. There was once a man who prayed for influence, believing he could use it to serve others. But when the opportunity finally arrived, pride whispered in his ear. The platform that was meant to bless became a mirror, revealing what still needed surrender. In his humility, he realized, heaven trusts only those who no longer crave recognition. That's the delicate nature of the mirror of motives. It doesn't accuse, it reveals. It shows you to yourself. When you face it honestly, you see not failure, but formation. Every test in this stage asks one quiet question: would you still obey if no one saw? Think of gold again. Even after it's refined by fire, the smith polishes it, not for its value, but for its reflection. He looks into the surface to see himself. If the image is distorted, he keeps polishing. That's what heaven is doing with you. The goal is not perfection, it's clarity. God wants to look into your life and see his own reflection shining back. Sometimes this process is subtle. You might notice opportunities that once excited you no longer stir your spirit. You begin to crave peace over attention, depth over speed, substance over status. That shift isn't boredom, it's spiritual maturity. The hunger that drove you before is replaced by a quieter, purer desire to please God, not people. The mirror of motives doesn't only expose pride, it also reveals hidden fear. Fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear that you're not enough. These fears disguise themselves as humility, but secretly restrain obedience. That's why heaven keeps confronting them. Because the chosen cannot be ruled by fear, they are moved by love. You might remember moments when you wanted to give, but hesitated. When you felt called to speak truth but stayed silent. When you knew what was right but worried what others would think. Those moments weren't random. They were the mirror reflecting your inner world. But look at you now. You've changed. You no longer seek validation from noise. You no longer depend on approval to feel worthy. The mirror no longer terrifies you because you've made peace with what it shows. The heart that once wrestled with mixed motives now beats steady with surrender. There's a story of a woman who wanted to serve God wholeheartedly. She volunteered, gave generously, and loved loudly. Yet she constantly felt unseen. One day, while praying, she heard a gentle voice whisper, "Would you still do it if no one ever thanked you?" Tears streamed down her face as she answered, "Yes." That yes marked her graduation. Because the moment obedience becomes unconditional, heaven opens its next gate. This is where you are now. The mirror of motives is not meant to condemn, it's meant to confirm. It shows that your heart, though imperfect, is loyal, that your intentions, though tested, have remained true. The world often celebrates results, but heaven celebrates purity. Many can perform miracles, but few can carry them without ego. Many can lead crowds, but few can lead quietly when no one applauds. You've been chosen for the latter. That's why your journey took longer. It had to cleanse you from needing attention so you could be trusted with influence. When God looks at you now, he no longer sees a servant striving to prove worth. He sees a vessel ready to pour without demand. That's spiritual maturity, to do what is right, simply because it honors the one who called you, chosen one. Remember this truth. Heaven never promotes without purifying motives first. Every delay, every quiet season, Every unanswered prayer was heaven polishing your heart to reflect glory, not pride. You stand now as one who has looked into the mirror and not turned away. The fire has passed. The mirror has spoken. And heaven smiles. Because when the Lord weighs your heart now, He finds it ready. There is a moment in every chosen one's story when the wilderness ends. You don't always notice it immediately. The transition is subtle. The air feels lighter. The silence less heavy. And your spirit begins to sense movement again. You have learned enough, endured enough, and surrendered enough. Now, heaven whispers a new word over your life: graduation. The word of God reveals in the book of Joshua, chapter 1, verse 9, "Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid, do not be discouraged. For the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go." Those words are not a command of pressure, they are a promise of presence. God isn't telling you to create courage, He's telling you to walk in the courage He already placed within you. You've been tested long enough in the wilderness of waiting. Now comes the march toward fulfillment. Think back to how the Israelites wandered 40 years before entering the promised land. The desert was never meant to destroy them, it was meant to develop them. Every dry step trained their faith for what abundance would require. They had to learn obedience before they could handle overflow. You've walked through your own version of that wilderness. What felt like delay was training in disguise. You learned that not every closed door was an enemy attack. Some were divine redirections. You discovered that manna doesn't fall forever, eventually. God expects you to plant, and you realize that dependence is not weakness, it's partnership. The wilderness taught you how to recognize His voice in scarcity, so you'll never forget it in success. The time in hiding was sacred. You prayed for change. But heaven was changing you. You asked for new seasons. But God was preparing new strength. Every unseen battle refined your discernment. Every lonely night deepened your trust. Now, as the sun rises on your next chapter, you'll notice the same landscapes look different, not because the land has changed, but because your vision has. There's a story told of a young man who felt forgotten. He served faithfully, but watched others move ahead. Years passed, and he nearly gave up. Then one morning, unexpectedly, a door opened. The offer was greater than anything he had imagined. But what shocked him most was how calm he felt. He realized the wilderness had done its job. He no longer needed to strive for recognition. He was ready to serve with stability. That is the true sign of graduation, when you no longer rush to prove yourself, because peace has replaced pressure. You stop asking, "When will it happen?" and start saying, "However you lead, He'll follow." The wilderness season ends not with fanfare, but with quiet assurance. Heaven doesn't announce your promotion with noise. It whispers it into your spirit. That's how you know you've crossed over. Look at how your faith responds differently now. Problems that once triggered panic now meet patience. Delays that once frustrated you now feel like protection. You've learned that peace isn't the absence of storms, it's the awareness that God walks on the water beside you. Picture yourself standing at the edge of the Jordan River like Joshua and the people of Israel. Behind you lies the desert familiar, yet finished. Before you stretches a new land unseen, but promised. The river looks impossible to cross. But heaven never calls you to step where His presence won't lead. The command to be strong and courageous is really an invitation to trust the one who walks before you. Graduation from the wilderness doesn't mean you won't face challenges. It means you'll face them differently. You no longer fight from fear, you fight from faith. You no longer question His timing, you rest in His plan. Every lesson learned in hiddenness now becomes your tool for harvest. The same endurance that kept you alive in the desert will sustain you in abundance. And the same humility that bowed in scarcity will keep you anchored when blessings multiply. Chosen one. This new season will not require more striving, only more believing. You have passed the tests that broke many. You've learned the rhythm of trust. And heaven now trusts you with territory. The wilderness was your classroom. This land is your assignment. You stand at the threshold of fulfillment, steady, silent, and ready. The dust of the desert is still on your feet, but your heart burns with promise. Heaven has already moved. Now it's your turn to step. And as you step forward, don't rush, walk with reverence. Every footprint you leave now becomes prophecy for someone behind you. The same grace that carried you will guide them home. There are moments when heaven confirms your faith, not through words, but through evidence. You've endured the silence, survived the storms, and stood through the tests. Now heaven begins to reveal proof, the undeniable signs that everything you carried in faith was never in vain. The Apostle Paul reminds us in the second letter to the Corinthians, chapter 4, verse 17, "For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all." This verse isn't poetic comfort, it's spiritual mathematics. The weight of your past pain is being exchanged for the weight of eternal glory. Every burden you lifted, every tear you shed, every lonely night you survived was an invisible transaction. Heaven was keeping the record, converting pain into power, sorrow into strength, faith into fruit. There's a rhythm to divine justice. What you sow in tears returns multiplied in testimony. You may not have noticed it yet, but heaven's arithmetic never fails. What looked like subtraction was actually divine multiplication. When something left your life, something greater was being prepared to enter. There's a story of a woman who prayed for years for restoration in her family. Nothing seemed to change until one quiet evening when she received a call she never expected. A reconciliation that had seemed impossible suddenly bloomed naturally. She wept, not because the promise arrived, but because she finally saw that every unanswered prayer had been preparation for that one moment of fulfillment. That's what this section of your journey represents: proof. The proof of covenant, proof that God's hand never left, proof that waiting was never wasted. Your scars are not reminders of defeat, they are signatures on heaven's agreement that you belong to Him. Think of a vineyard after the harvest. The vines look bare, stripped, even lifeless. But within the soil, roots grow stronger for the next season. What looks empty is just unseen preparation. The fruit will return richer, sweeter, and abundant. Your life is that vineyard. The pruning was never about punishment. It was about increase. You're entering a stage where heaven begins to unfold what it has been building in secret. Small signs will appear first: a door opening, an unexpected opportunity, peace replacing anxiety. These are not coincidences, they are confirmations. The covenant between you and heaven is active again, and perhaps you've already begun to feel it, the quiet joy that doesn't depend on circumstances, the inner peace that feels unexplainable. That's proof too. God doesn't always show evidence in external blessings. Sometimes the first sign of victory is internal stillness. When your spirit rests, even before results appear, that's heaven whispering, "It's done." And there's something deeply beautiful about this moment. You no longer need to convince anyone of your calling. The fruit will speak for itself. People will see the change, the glow, the grace, and they will know. You won't need to defend what God has already confirmed. It's time to celebrate quietly, to breathe, to recognize that what's coming is not a reward, it's a revelation. You didn't just survive, you were certified. Heaven doesn't honor endurance with applause, it honors it with assignment. If this truth stirs something within you, let your spirit agree in a simple way. Comment, "It's done." This isn't a slogan, it's a declaration of completion. When you write, "It's done," you're aligning your words with heaven's verdict. You're saying, the waiting season has served its purpose. The covenant is sealed. The work is finished. It's not about claiming possession, it's about acknowledging peace. Let those words be your spiritual seal, the soft echo that tells heaven, "I see the proof. I receive the promise." Because this time, you're not striving anymore. You're resting in fulfillment. You are walking proof of God's faithfulness. And everything that was hidden will soon testify on your behalf. The evidence is unfolding, quietly but unmistakably. Heaven's promises never expire. They simply mature until you're ready to receive them. And when the evidence appears, remember, this is not the end of your journey, but the unveiling of it. Proof is not just for your reassurance, it's heaven's way of saying, "Now others will see what I've always known about you." Your story becomes a mirror where others recognize their own hope. When you live as proof, you no longer chase blessings, they follow you. You become the answered prayer to someone else's question, the living testimony that faith works. The miracle isn't only in what happened to you, it's in what's happening through you. So walk gently into this next chapter. Carry your proof with humility. Let gratitude be your language, and let every breath whisper this truth. What God begins, He always finishes. There are turning points in every chosen life where the invisible becomes visible, where what you carried quietly within is now seen. Not as pride, but as purpose fulfilled. The long road of endurance has brought you here. You've walked through loss, learned through silence, been purified by motive. And now, heaven begins a transfer. What you once only believed, you will now begin to become. This is the mantle transfer. The ancient text in the book of Hebrews, chapter 10, verse 36, proclaims, you need to persevere, so that when you have done the will of God, you will receive what He has promised. That is where you stand now, between obedience and inheritance. The mantle isn't a physical object, it's a spiritual weight. It's heaven's confirmation that you're ready to carry what once carried you. The lessons that once broke you now become your language, your authority, your anointing. Think of Elijah and Elisha. The young prophet followed the older one faithfully, walking step by step even when others mocked his devotion. He didn't seek position, he sought presence. When Elijah was taken, the mantle fell not because Elisha demanded it, but because heaven trusted him with it. The mantle always finds those who stay when others leave. You've walked that same road. You've stayed faithful when it felt foolish, kept praying when no one else believed, and kept serving when it wasn't convenient. That's why heaven now turns its gaze toward you. The transfer doesn't happen with noise or applause, it happens in stillness. When God places new weight on your shoulders, it may feel heavier before it feels holy. But don't mistake responsibility for burden. The mantle is not a chain, it's a bridge. It connects heaven's purpose with earth's need. Using you as the link. There's a story about a woman who used to pray, "God, give me power to change things." One day, he answered not with miracles, but with people broken, hurting, complicated souls who needed love more than power. It took her years to realize that God had indeed answered. He had simply turned her into the miracle. That is what the mantle does. It turns you into the answer to someone's prayer. You'll begin to notice your words carry more weight. Your presence brings peace. Your silence brings conviction. It's not superiority, it's stewardship. The light inside you burns differently now. It doesn't just comfort, it commissions. You've become a torchbearer, chosen one. This is the sacred threshold between being refined and being released. But remember, what you carry must be sustained by love, not pride. The same humility that guarded you in obscurity will keep you safe in visibility. Now, take a breath. Let these words sink into your heart like morning light touching still waters. Feel the shift, not outside, but within. Something has settled. Something has begun. And if this message reaches your soul the way heaven intended, I want you to know this light we share here is a living flame. It's kept alive through faith, through prayer, through the simple devotion of hearts that choose to keep it burning. If this flame has warmed your heart, let it travel farther. Press, like to release it into the world's dark corners. If you've found comfort in these words, share them, so another weary traveler may find their direction again. If you wish to stay near this flow of divine reflection, subscribe not as a follower, but as a keeper of the flame. And for those whose hearts feel a deeper stirring, you may choose to donate, not because you must, but because you want to. Think of it as adding oil to the lamp that lights unseen paths. A drop of generosity becomes a ripple of grace. It helps this message reach the one who needs it most. Never feel oublié. Giving is never about transaction, it's about transformation. The same way rivers feed oceans, your kindness sustains something far greater than this moment. It becomes part of the eternal flow of hope. What you offer your time, your prayer, your gift becomes a note in heaven's song. Together, we make harmony that reaches souls you'll never meet, but whose lives will be touched because you chose to keep the light alive. Chosen one. Your mantle is not just for you, it's for those who will walk after you. Carry it gently, shine it freely, and know this truth. Heaven trusts you now. You've waited long for this moment. You've passed the tests and kept your heart soft. The mantle has fallen, and it fits perfectly. The world will see the light, but heaven will see the obedience, and that's what truly matters. May your light never flicker, your love never harden, and your purpose never fade. Sometimes, recognition doesn't arrive through blessings, it arrives through betrayal. It's one of heaven's most mysterious strategies. When the mantle rests upon your shoulders, opposition inevitably rises. Not because you've done something wrong, but because what you carry threatens what's false. The very people who once celebrated your light may now question it. But this, too, is part of the design. Scripture records in the first letter of Peter, chapter 4, verse 12, "Dear friends, Do not be surprised at the fiery ordeal that has come on you to test you, as though something strange were happening to you. And the verse doesn't say if the fire comes, it says when. Because testing by opposition is inevitable for the chosen. You are not just refined by silence and suffering, you are sharpened by misunderstanding. Heaven allows friction not to humiliate you, but to shape you into something unoffendable, unshakeable, unstoppable. You've likely noticed this pattern already. The higher you rise in awareness, the more resistance you meet. Words once harmless now sting. Relationships shift without warning, and people you helped may turn away. The instinct is to retreat, but the invitation is to remain calm. Heaven whispers, don't react. Reveal. When enemies appear, they are rarely sent to destroy you. They are sent to expose what still needs peace within you. If their words still wound you, the lesson continues. If you can love them anyway, the test is complete. There's a story of a man named Daniel, faithful and steady. He prayed openly, not out of rebellion, but devotion. Yet envy rose around him. His integrity provoked insecurity. The lion's den wasn't punishment, it was proof. Heaven used opposition to magnify his faith. When the stone was rolled away, everyone saw what God had already known. Daniel's heart was uncorrupted. That's how heaven works with you. 2. When others misunderstand your calling, remember, the test is not about them, it's about you. Will you keep your peace when misjudged? Will you choose silence when accusation tempts you to shout? The warrior who fights with calm wins battles without violence. Think of opposition like wind against a mountain. The wind can roar for centuries, but the mountain remains. It's not the noise that defines endurance, it's stillness. You have become that mountain. What once moved you now merely passes by. Sometimes betrayal is simply heaven's way of moving people who can't go further with you. They were part of your preparation, not your destination. If you cling to them, you'll miss the next stage of growth. Don't curse the departure, bless it. Every person who leaves your life by misunderstanding creates space for those who will enter by discernment. Painful as it is, rejection often becomes revelation. It reveals who's truly aligned with your purpose and who was only attracted to your peace. When peace fades, pretenders depart. That is mercy, not loss. There's another image, a tree shedding leaves in autumn. To the casual observer, it looks like death, but the tree knows its preservation. It must release the old to survive the coming winter. When betrayal strips you bare, it's not the end, it's preparation for new growth. Chosen one. The test of enemies is one of heaven's highest honors. God trusts you to respond differently, to resist the urge to retaliate, to choose blessing over bitterness. Every time you stay silent, every time you forgive without being asked, you are writing heaven's victory into the earth's script. In the spiritual realm, your response matters more than their attack. The weapon may form, but it cannot prosper if your heart remains pure. Every insult hurled at you becomes raw material for favor. That's why Jesus prayed for those who hurt him. It wasn't weakness, it was wisdom. He understood that mercy disarms darkness faster than anger ever could. So, if you feel surrounded, misunderstood, or betrayed, take a breath. You're not losing control. You're being refined for greater authority. Heaven doesn't test what it hasn't trusted. The fire around you is proof of value within you. One day, Those who opposed you will see clearly. The same mouths that cursed you will speak your name in respect. But by then, it won't even matter, because you'll have already moved past the need for validation. This is how heaven graduates its warriors, not through applause, but through endurance. You learn that love without condition is the strongest form of power. Keep walking with grace. Keep your tone soft, your steps steady, your heart guarded by peace. You've learned that true authority doesn't need to shout. It just stands, unmoved, until the storm exhausts itself. Chosen one. The enemies weren't your setback, they were your sharpening. And now, forged by fire and unbroken by words, you stand as proof that even betrayal can become a bridge to blessing. There is a sound that follows every battle, a stillness that doesn't come from silence, but from victory. You have walked through storms, faced opposition, stood alone in the wilderness. And now you sense it. The atmosphere is shifting again. What once felt heavy now feels holy. Something inside you whispers, "This is different." Esme, as written in the Gospel of John, chapter 16, verse 33. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. No, you've known the first part of that verse intimately, the trouble. You've lived through confusion, endured betrayal, and felt the crushing weight of uncertainty. But now, heaven invites you to embrace the second part, the overcoming. The storm didn't stop you. The darkness didn't drown you. You've emerged on the other side with scars that shine like armor. This is the season of shift, when everything that once worked against you begins to work for you. Closed doors reopen. Forgotten seeds bloom. Even the wounds that once bled now speak wisdom. You can feel it in the air, can't you? The rhythm of resistance has changed. The wind that once opposed you now pushes you forward. There's a story of a man who spent years feeling like nothing would ever move. Every time he tried to step forward, life pushed him back twice as far. But one day, he stopped fighting and simply stood still. That's when the wind changed direction. It didn't stop blowing, it started carrying him. He realized the storm had never been against him, it had been preparing his wings. That is what's happening to you now. You've learned to stop forcing outcomes. You no longer chase what was never meant to stay. The peace you carry is no longer fragile, it's fortified. You've become unbothered, not because you don't care, but because you finally trust. Pay attention to the small signs around you, the quiet opportunities, the divine coincidences, the gentle timing that feels too precise to be random. These are the first signals of alignment. Heaven is orchestrating movement on your behalf, like a symphony of unseen order. Every delay that once frustrated you was a note being tuned. Now, the music begins. The shift is subtle but strong. You might wake up one morning and feel lighter, without knowing why. A situation that once triggered fear will suddenly feel harmless. That's not coincidence, that's healing. Heaven doesn't always announce miracles with thunder. Sometimes it begins with calm. Think of a sunrise, the moment just before dawn is darkest. Yet within minutes, everything transforms. That's where you stand now, in that sacred pause between the last shadow and the first light. You've passed the test, endured the refining, and heaven now releases the renewal. But with every divine shift comes a response. Heaven watches not to test, but to record your agreement. A simple act of recognition becomes the key that opens the next gate. So if your spirit feels this resonance, if you sense that peace is finally replacing pressure, comment the number 222. Why 222? Because it is the number of divine balance and partnership. It symbolizes the meeting point between your obedience and heaven's orchestration, between your effort and his timing. The first 2 represents your faith. The second represents his promise. And the third, the union of both, represents alignment. When you type 222, you're not asking for blessing. You're acknowledging that it's already unfolding. It's the gentle echo of heaven saying, "Walk with me, step for step." Imagine 2 footprints moving across sand, yours and his side by side. That's the image of 222, not rushing ahead, not lagging behind, but walking in harmony. When you write it, you're declaring, "I'm done striving alone. I walk in rhythm with divine order." Type 222 as your quiet yes. It's your soul's way of pressing into peace. Every time your eyes meet that number again in a clock, a receipt, a page, it will whisper, "You're aligned. Keep walking." This is your crossover moment. The past no longer holds power, and the future no longer intimidates. You are standing in the center of divine cooperation, a place where striving ends and grace takes the lead. Chosen one. What's ahead of you will not require struggle, only surrender. You have reached the rhythm where heaven's pace and your purpose move as one. The hardest battles are behind you. Now, you walk not in fear, but in flow. Peace isn't coming. Peace has already found you. And as you walk in this new rhythm, remember, grace doesn't rush. Every step you take in peace is prophecy fulfilled. Stay steady, for heaven now matches your every heartbeat. Every shift brings not only new blessings, but also new responsibilities. When God elevates you, He also calls you to a deeper humility, a posture that protects what pride could destroy. The greater your anointing, the softer your spirit must become. This is the next chapter of your journey, the call to humility. The prophet Jeremiah testifies in chapter 17, verse 10, "I, the Lord, search the heart and examine the mind, to reward each person according to their conduct." No, this verse is both a warning and a promise. It reminds us that elevation is never the reward for talent, but for trustworthiness. Heaven doesn't promote gifts, it promotes hearts that can carry them without distortion. When God searches you, He isn't looking for perfection, He's looking for purity of intent. After seasons of endurance, when the spotlight begins to shine, it's tempting to believe you've arrived. But heaven knows that success can be a subtler test than suffering. Pain refines, but power reveals. What fire couldn't break, pride often can. That's why humility isn't optional, it's armor. You've probably felt this transition already. Opportunities increasing, people noticing, your name whispered in rooms it's never entered before. That's not by chance, but it comes with a spiritual warning label. Stay small inside. The moment you begin to think, "This happened because of me," you step away from the very grace that made it possible. There's a story of a shepherd who became a king. When David was crowned, he could have forgotten the pasture, the smell of sheep, the long nights under the stars, but he didn't. His humility kept him grounded even in glory. That's why heaven could keep using him. God never removes crowns from humble heads, only from proud ones. The call to humility isn't about thinking less of yourself. It's about thinking of yourself less. It's remembering that what you carry is borrowed light, not your own flame. You are a lantern. The glow within belongs to Him. When people see you shine, let them see through you, not just to you. Think of a river. The higher the water rises, the quieter it flows. Shallow streams make noise. Deep rivers move silently. That's how heaven wants you to move. Now, quiet strength. Steady current. No need for noise. Let your depth speak where words cannot. This season will test your heart in subtle ways. You'll receive praise you didn't expect. You'll be trusted with influence. You'll be asked for guidance by those who once doubted you. And in each moment, heaven will watch not to catch you in failure, but to see if you still remember the valley that built you. When humility guides your steps, even your success becomes worship. Every accomplishment becomes a reminder of divine mercy. Each open door becomes another altar to lay your gratitude on. The truly chosen don't boast about their blessings, they protect them with reverence. There's another story of a woman who had prayed for years for promotion. When it finally came, she celebrated, but quietly. Her friends asked, "Why aren't you shouting?" She smiled and said, "Because I remember the silence that taught me how to listen." That's humility, to celebrate without arrogance, to receive without forgetting. Humility isn't weakness, it's wisdom wrapped in gentleness. It's what keeps miracles sustainable. Pride shouts, "Look what I've done," but humility whispers, "Look what God trusted me with." That whisper is what keeps heaven close. The call to humility also means protecting your heart from comparison. You no longer need to measure your pace against anyone else's. God's timing for you is tailored. What looks slow is often sacred. The same God who hid you for years is still guiding your unveiling. There is no competition in obedience. So as blessings begin to unfold, hold them lightly. Don't clutch them out of fear, and don't flaunt them out of pride. Simply carry them with gratitude. As a servant who knows the value of grace, the more heaven gives you, the more it expects tenderness. You can be strong and still gentle, wise and still teachable, anointed and still approachable. That balance is what keeps favor flowing. Chosen one. Humility is your greatest crown. It ensures that power never poisons you and that blessings never blind you. It keeps you safe from the shadows of success. The humble cannot fall, because they never stand too high to kneel. Walk softly. Even when the path feels golden, speak kindly. Even when your words carry weight, remember the same God who lifted you can sustain you only if you stay low enough for His grace to rest upon your shoulders. You've passed through the fire and the flood. Now, humility becomes your covering, your invisible shield in seasons of influence. This is how heaven keeps the chosen steady, not through strength alone, but through surrender. When humility has settled into your spirit, something extraordinary begins to happen. The pain of your past transforms into power. The ashes that once marked your suffering become the oil that anoints your purpose. You begin to understand that nothing you endured was wasted. Every heartbreak, every delay, every disappointment was part of the divine equation that shaped your destiny. This is where you step fully into your authority, anointed for impact. We find it spoken in the book of Romans. chapter 8, verse 18. I consider that our present sufferings are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us. End. Those words are not poetic comfort. They are a blueprint. The very weight of your past has been the training ground for your future glory. What once pressed you down now propels you forward. Heaven never wastes suffering. It recycles it into strength. You've likely noticed that something inside you has changed. The emotions that once overwhelmed you no longer have the same power. You don't break the way you used to. You respond differently now, not out of defensiveness, but out of discernment. That is the evidence of anointing. The fire that once burned you now bends around you. Think of a blacksmith forging a blade. Every strike, every spark, every moment in the heat is necessary. The metal doesn't realize it's becoming something valuable. It only feels the pain of shaping. That's how heaven worked on you. Each trial wasn't random, it was rhythm. Each disappointment was a hammer of refinement. The anointing is never poured cheaply. It's pressed from pain. Now, as you carry this new weight of grace, notice how people begin to respond to you differently. Some are drawn to you without understanding why. It's because your presence carries healing. You walk into rooms and shift atmospheres. You speak softly, and hearts awaken. You don't have to announce who you are. Your peace does it for you. The anointing is not about noise. It's about effect. Oil doesn't shout. It shines. It moves quietly, coating everything it touches, leaving transformation behind. That's you now, divine oil in motion. Every conversation becomes a seed. Every act of kindness becomes ministry. Every moment of silence becomes intercession. You've become a vessel heaven trusts. There's a story of a young man who spent years praying for power to change the world. He expected lightning, visions, and noise. Instead, God sent him people who needed listening, compassion, and time. Slowly, he realized the power he'd prayed for wasn't explosive, it was empathetic. His greatest impact came not from preaching, but from presence. That's the nature of true anointing. It flows through humility, not through force. You've reached a point where your pain no longer defines you, it refines you. Every scar has become a story, every loss a lesson, every tear a teaching. You've been equipped not just to survive, but to serve. The light you carry isn't decorative, it's directional. It shows others the way through their own shadows. Look back at your journey and notice how everything connects now. The betrayal that once broke you taught you forgiveness. The rejection that wounded you taught you value. The silence that scared you taught you to hear God clearly. That's why you move differently. Now you carry revelation that only pain can teach. This is what it means to be anointed for impact. You've been entrusted with empathy, armored with peace, and fueled by grace. You no longer see life as happening to you, but through you. You've become a bridge between what heaven wants to release and what earth desperately needs to feel. When the anointing settles, it doesn't make you untouchable. It makes you available. It teaches you to see the divine in ordinary moments, the miracle in the mundane, the sacred in the simple. You begin to understand that your greatest ministry isn't in a pulpit, but in presence, in how you love, forgive, listen, and carry peace into chaos. And you'll notice something subtle but profound. People begin to find rest near you. They might not say it, but they feel safer, calmer, lighter, That's not charisma, that's calling. That's the fragrance of one who has been crushed, refined, and poured out, chosen one. The anointing upon you is not decoration, it's delegation. You have been commissioned to carry light into darkness, not by force, but by simply being. Every day you live with integrity. Every word you speak with compassion. Every quiet act of obedience, these are your miracles. You no longer need to strive to make an impact. Your very existence in alignment with heaven does it naturally. The oil flows where surrender leads. And you, having surrendered completely, are now unstoppable, not because of your strength, but because of the strength flowing through you. When a single light shines, darkness trembles, but when many lights join, the night itself begins to disappear. This is what heaven is orchestrating now, the gathering of the warriors of light. You were never meant to carry the flame alone. The strength you've built, the wisdom you've gained, the peace you've cultivated, it's time to share it. For when one chosen rises, others awaken. The psalmist wrote long ago in Psalms, chapter 126, verse 5, "Those who sow with tears will reap with songs of joy." That's what this moment is, the reaping, the long season of tears, stretching through nights of prayer and quiet endurance, is beginning to bloom into harvest. Every lonely seed you planted, your forgiveness, your patience, your obedience is now producing fruit, not just for you, but for those around you. You felt this pull recently, the sense that your story isn't yours to keep anymore. The light within you is pressing outward, eager to ignite others, and when your flame touches theirs, a chain of illumination begins that no darkness can stop. You're not just being blessed, you're being multiplied. Picture a single lantern flickering in a valley. Then imagine one by one, others appearing, each taking light from the first, until the whole landscape glows. That's what heaven is doing through you and through everyone who finds this message. Each heart that awakens becomes another lantern against despair. The world is watching for that glow. It doesn't need noise. It needs warmth. And so, I invite you to look around, not physically, but spiritually. You are surrounded by others who are rising just like you. They might live across oceans, speak different languages, walk different paths, but their spirits hum with the same frequency of light. When you respond, they feel it. When you share truth, they are strengthened. This is the silent communion of the chosen. If this light has reached you, let it ripple outward. Press like, not as reaction, but as recognition, as if you're lighting a candle beside thousands of others in the same night. Share it like passing a torch, allowing its flame to find someone still searching in the dark. And subscribe not as a follower, but as a guardian of the fire, a keeper of the ongoing warmth. And here's something simple yet sacred. Leave a comment below. You can write a few words, or even just a symbol of flame, RE, to say, "My light is alive." Every comment becomes another spark, another silent testimony that faith is still burning across the earth. If your heart feels drawn to go deeper, you may choose to donate. Think of it as adding oil to a shared lamp, the collective flame that keeps hope glowing through the night. No pressure, no price tag, only willingness. What you give turns into warmth for someone you may never meet, yet whose soul will feel the light you helped sustain. It's not transaction, it's transformation. every gesture of engagement, every spark of generosity becomes part of this unseen network of light, stretching far beyond what we can measure. You might wonder, what difference can one small flame make? But even a single candle can ignite 1,000 others without losing its glow. The same is true for your kindness. It doesn't lessen you, it multiplies the light within you. The flame we build here isn't mine or yours, it's ours. A living cathedral of light, built one act of faith at a time, chosen one. Your endurance was the foundation. Your light is the testimony, and your compassion is the invitation. Together, we keep this fire alive, one like, one share, one word, one drop of oil at a time. And as heaven watches this glow spread across hearts and homes, it whispers the same truth to each flame. You were never meant to burn alone. End of 2. Thank you for shining. Thank you for giving. Thank you for being the proof that light still wins. You've carried this light through storms most could not survive. And now you stand as living proof that faith never fails. The flame inside you doesn't flicker, it grows stronger with every act of kindness you release into the world. There will always be darkness that tries to whisper, "You are alone." But every time you share truth, encourage another, or give quietly, the night retreats a little more. Your life itself has become a candle in the wind that will not die. Keep shining where you are planted. Keep loving where others would grow cold. Because heaven doesn't measure your impact by numbers, it measures it by warmth. And in that warmth, you have already changed eternity. There comes a time in the journey of every chosen one when revelation becomes responsibility. You no longer see through fragments, you see the whole tapestry. Every thread, even the painful ones, has found its place. The silence, the storms, the refining fires, they were never random. They were architecture, divine design. And now, heaven begins to unveil what all those seasons were preparing you for, the rise of your light. As the Lord declared through the prophet Isaiah, chapter 60, verse 1, "Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you." That verse isn't about ambition, it's about awakening. Arise doesn't mean run, it means remember. It's the sound of heaven telling you, stand where I placed you, shine with what I've given you. The world doesn't need a louder version of you, it needs the truer version, the one forged through fire and softened by grace. You've spent so long believing your purpose was waiting in the distance, hidden in some future season. But what if it's here now, quietly unfolding through your daily obedience? Purpose rarely announces itself with trumpets. It often looks like the simple act of staying faithful when no one's watching, of forgiving again, of showing up with peace when chaos screams. These quiet moments are heaven's building blocks for eternal impact. There's a story about an artist who worked for years on a single painting. Every day, he added small strokes, seemingly insignificant, until one morning, the first rays of dawn illuminated the canvas, and suddenly the masterpiece was visible. What once looked ordinary revealed extraordinary depth. That's how destiny unfolds, one hidden brushstroke at a time, until light reveals what patience created. You are that artist. Every act of endurance, every moment of prayer, every word of grace has been a brushstroke. And now, as the light of this new season rises, the full picture begins to appear, not just for others to see, but for you to finally recognize. When God said, "Arise," He wasn't asking you to become something new. He was asking you to remember who you already are. You've always been light. Even when surrounded by shadow, the wilderness didn't extinguish you, it refined you. The delays didn't deny you, they defined you. You may notice how your surroundings begin to shift. People start being drawn to you without understanding why. They'll say, "There's something peaceful about you," or "I feel safe around you." That's not coincidence. That's your light radiating from the refinement of your spirit. The same way dawn gently touches everything it sees, you're meant to bring illumination without force, warmth without words. The world is full of noise, and yet light moves quietly. It doesn't argue with darkness, it simply appears. And darkness disappears. That is your role now. You are not called to fight shadows, but to outshine them. The higher you rise in peace, the less you need to prove anything. Light never apologizes for shining, it just does. You will soon see why every delay was necessary. Some doors were closed because you weren't meant to walk through them. You were meant to build new ones. Some relationships ended not to break you, but to redirect you toward people who would nurture your light instead of dim it. The divine rearrangement you once resented was protection in disguise. There's a garden metaphor heaven often uses. A seed must stay buried before it breaks open. Underground, unseen. Unseen roots form the strength that will later hold fruit. Your years in hiddenness were those roots. Now, as you arise, your fruit will appear without strain. You won't have to prove your growth. It will speak for itself. Chosen one. This new season is not about striving, it's about shining. You don't need to push, you need to be. Your light was never meant to compete. It was meant to complete the picture of grace that God is painting through His people. Walk into this day with quiet confidence. You've already passed through what would have broken others. You are standing where many fell. That is proof of divine favor. Carry yourself with humility, but also with holy assurance. The same light that rose upon Isaiah's generation rises now upon you. And when the world looks your way, let them see not your glow, but His glory reflecting through your gentleness, your endurance, your truth. This is your dawn. The night has done its work. Now it must step aside. You are the morning God promised. Rise, shine, and let the light you carry heal the shadows around you. Every journey has a moment when the traveler looks back, not in regret, but in recognition. You've walked through valleys, climbed unseen mountains, endured storms that felt endless, and now you stand at the summit of understanding. Everything behind you makes sense in a way it never did before. What once looked like chaos now forms a divine pattern. You finally see it, the faithfulness of God stitched through every season. The voice of heaven resounds through the book of Revelation. Chapter 3, verse 11. I am coming soon. Hold on to what you have, so that no one will take your crown. Oh, that crown isn't made of gold or silver. It's woven from endurance, obedience, and quiet faith. You've held on when others let go, trusted when logic failed, and believed when belief felt impossible. That invisible faith has become your visible crown. It's not a trophy for display, but a symbol of authority, a reminder that you have conquered what once conquered you. There's something sacred about standing at this point in the journey. You no longer chase blessings, you carry them. You no longer fear the dark, you understand its purpose. You no longer need every question answered. You've learned that peace doesn't depend on explanations, but on presence. Look how far you've come. The wilderness didn't devour you. The waiting didn't destroy you. The breaking didn't erase you. You've emerged whole, wiser, softer, and stronger. What you've endured has become your testimony. Every scar now glows faintly, not with pain, but with glory. The very things that wounded you have become the same things heaven now uses to heal others through you. Think of a potter's vessel. When cracks appear, most see damage, but in the hands of the master, those cracks become places where light escapes. Your brokenness didn't ruin you, it released brilliance. What once seemed like weakness has become the doorway through which heaven shines most clearly. Now, heaven whispers a new command, not fight, not wait, but hold on. Hold on to your faith, to your peace, to your gentleness. The world around you may grow loud, distracted, impatient, but you have learned a different rhythm. You walk by stillness. You breathe by surrender. You live by trust. To hold on doesn't mean cling in fear. It means stay in alignment. Stay in posture. The crown isn't given once, it's kept through consistency. Every day you choose grace over anger, truth over noise, humility over pride. You polish that crown anew. There's a story of an old gardener who tended a single rose bush for decades. Each season, storms tore its branches, frost bit its petals, and yet he never stopped caring for it. When asked why, he smiled and said, "Because every spring, it remembers how to bloom." That's what holding on looks like. You've remembered how to bloom after every winter. The glory that is coming isn't something external, it's something awakening within you. You've been crowned not to be worshipped, but to serve, not to rule, but to restore. True kingship in the kingdom is not dominance, it's devotion. Chosen one. Heaven isn't finished writing your story, it's merely turning the page. The same grace that carried you through darkness will now carry you into destiny. You don't need to rush into what's next. You only need to remain faithful in what's now. The divine plan unfolding through your life moves like a sunrise, inevitable, unstoppable, steady. When God says, "Hold on to what you have," He's not warning from fear, but from love. He's saying, "Protect the purity I've placed in you. Guard the peace you've earned. Defend the light that cost you nights of tears. Because that light isn't fragile, it's sacred. And sacred things must be held with care." So, as you stand here crowned, yet humble, strong yet gentle, let gratitude rise like incense. Every step behind you was necessary. Every tear was seed. Every prayer, a stone in the foundation of your destiny. You have become both temple and testimony. And when you look ahead, don't see uncertainty, see promise. You are walking into fullness, not because you demanded it, but because you endured for it. The same God who sustained you will complete you. Hold on. Keep your heart steady. Keep your flame pure, because the glory ahead will make every shadow worthwhile. This is not the end of your story. It's the beginning of your reign, quiet, holy, everlasting. You have not just survived, you have been crowned. And as you walk forward, remember, the crown you wear is not for display, but for duty. Let every step shine with gratitude, and let every breath whisper, glory still unfolds. So, here you are at the end. Yet somehow at another beginning, you've walked through revelation after revelation, each word shaping you, stretching you, reminding you that you were never ordinary. You've been refined, restored, and reawakened. The crown you carry now is not a reward, it's a responsibility. And the light that burns within you is not meant to stay hidden. It was always meant to travel. Everything written here was a mirror reflecting what heaven already saw in you. You've passed the tests that most never recognize: the silence, the rejection, the waiting, the refining. But you made it. You stand radiant, not because life was easy, but because grace was constant. Now, the story doesn't end, it expands through you. If these words have touched something in your spirit, press like. Think of it not as a button, but as a candle you light beside others, a small flame joining a greater fire. When you share this message, imagine sending out a beam across the distance, so that someone still wandering might see it and remember their way home. And when you feel something rise within, leave a comment below. Write a word, a sentence, a kit testimony. Your words are not pixels, they are echoes of faith, ripples that touch souls you may never meet. Every comment becomes a living stone in this invisible temple of light we're building together. Subscribe if your heart longs to keep walking in this current of grace and revelation. This isn't about following, it's about belonging. Together, we form a river of awakened hearts, flowing in the same direction, toward peace, toward purpose, toward home. And if your spirit feels stirred, you may choose to donate, not as obligation, but as offering. Think of it as adding oil to the eternal lamp. Each drop keeps the light burning for others still searching through the night. What you give becomes warmth extended, hope renewed, light multiplied. Chosen one, this is not the end of the message. It's the continuation through you. Carry this flame gently but boldly. Speak light into shadows. Let your life become the sermon. Heaven keeps writing through your obedience. The same presence that found you here now goes with you everywhere. The light has passed to your hands. Keep it burning.